Welcome to MetroSTL. I'm your host, Antonio French. It has been a busy week for the Board of Aldermen. The new session has begun, and President Reed has already solicited millions of dollars for a project to attack our city's violence problem. He's also been part of a vote that, for at least the moment, will continue to require city workers to live in the city. We begin there with George Sells from MetroSTL.com.
At this time, we're going to present the resolution.
Those who want to work for the city will have to continue to live in the city. Aldermen have been debating getting rid of the residency requirement for city workers for months, but Friday decided it wasn't going to happen, at least not in its current form. Police have been particularly vocal in demanding the requirement be dropped. They blame it for their continuing shortage of officers. Both the chief of police, John Hayden, and the mayor, Lyda Crewson, have favored a change. But plenty of aldermen offered plenty of reasons not to make the move, at least not yet.
There's a myriad of issues that are really driving why we are not filling all these positions.
So Friday, the board said no, arguing the city needs to do a better job of recruiting residents in the city rather than sending wages and the taxes that follow to the suburbs.
I really don't think the city is doing enough to reach out and find people for this job. If you rode around with me just for one day, you'd see all the people that come up asking for and looking for jobs, right? So the city needs to reformat the way they're recruiting in these jobs.
The sponsor's goal was to put it on the 2020 November election ballot, which means there is still time for this bill to be brought back in another form. George Sells, MetroSTL.com.
Joining me now is President of the Board of Aldermen, Louis Reed. Thanks for joining us, Louis. How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. It's been a while. So for at least now, yet another attempt to eliminate the residency requirements for city workers has been thwarted down at the Board of Aldermen. Yeah. So you voted against that measure to keep those jobs reserved for city workers. Why did you, and why do you think the majority of the Board of Aldermen did as well?
Well, the majority of the Board of Aldermen, they took a look at the bill itself and felt like the bill fell way short of what would need it to happen. They also had a problem with the fact that a lot of the jobs that are left unfilled in the city, we really don't have any evidence that the city has done a good job or any job in terms of advertising and attempting to recruit people into those jobs. You probably remember the measure that was pushed back under the former Mayor Slay when he was working to fill some corrections jobs, and he said we cannot hire anybody in the city, nobody will apply, so we went multiple years with 50 jobs unfilled. When we gave them authorization to advertise outside of the city, and they advertised outside of the city, what happened? The people from within the city applied because they saw the advertisement, right? Yeah. So all of the applicants came from people within the city. We have, there are a lot of jobs that need to be filled, and we just don't think the city is doing a great job of advertising, which is why I'm doing a job fair next Tuesday and Wednesday, and I'm inviting people out to that. I'll send you more information.
Oh, that'd be great.
Be able to post it.
You know, with so many people looking for jobs in the city, it is probably surprising to them that the city says that they can't get people to fill these jobs. We have such a high unemployment rate. Two of the biggest voices behind pushing for this was the mayor and the police union. Yeah. And many folks, and I'm sure you agree, are a little concerned about having a police department and a police force that is even more separated from the communities that they patrol. And so if you eliminate the residency requirement altogether, you could have what almost looks more like an occupying force, where you have all these folks who live far away from the city, who just come here.
In every place and just coming here to work. Yeah.
Right, and I did hear that in the debate from some aldermen as part of the concern specifically about police. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, having a law enforcement that has a connection to the community beyond just picking up a paycheck is just critically important. People have said over and over again, I like to have a law enforcement that understands my neighborhood, some of them that may even live in my neighborhood, that care beyond just picking up a paycheck, because their family and their family's lives and it's beyond just their livelihood. It takes it further. So I think that was a very important point also. You know, the other thing is the city says that, you know, we have 150 open positions because, you know, we cannot advertise outside of the city, right? And you remember even when you were at the Board of Aldermen, because of the rate that they open up the academies, we've always had 125, 150 open positions. So we continued, even when you were at the board, we pushed them and said, hey, open up an academy, advertise for these positions, and get some people in there.
Right, and I also remember there was a push from the former Mayor Slay and the chief at the time, Dotson, to reduce the size of the police department.
Yes.
And they
People
said
don't know that.
Right, and so they actually intentionally shrunk the size of the police department. Many of us objected to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
They said they were going to operate smarter with a smaller force, and then of course what we expected actually happened, which is all of a sudden, oh, we need to fill these positions again, and now you're having trouble filling them.
And then also, you look at St. Louis County. St. Louis County has 60 open positions, right? So even if you advertise in St. Louis County, they're having a hard time filling the 60 positions that they have open, right? And the city is having, reportedly a hard time filling the positions they have. But we have not seen any evidence of that advertising and that pushing in those recruitings. I mean, the city should be recruiting from every single angle. They should be partnered with the Urban League. They should have Slate going to the schools. They should have the police department going to schools and everything, and just talking to kids and talking to the people on the street so that people know that that is a career path that they can choose, and they understand how to get into it, right? And some of the things that people may think are disqualifying things that will eliminate their opportunity to go into law enforcement, if they begin to engage with the community, they can lay some of those fears to rest. Yeah. But right now, a lot of people who may want to go in law enforcement, they think, well, I wouldn't be qualified because of all these things. Yeah. Right?
You know, a lot of attention is being put on the police department right now, especially because of the high rate of violence we've seen in the last few months. It's, really year-round, but especially the high number of children that have experienced gun violence. It really raised a lot of public concern. One of the efforts that you have been pushing is to bring new approaches to fighting crime. Absolutely. That is not just about enforcement, but also about engaging with the community and trying to bring all parties to the table. Tell us about the program that you've specifically been seeking funding for, Cure Violence.
Yes. Cure Violence is a great program. It's offered through the Justice Department. It's recognized through the Justice Department as a program that works certainly in urban settings, and it's been put in place all across the country in major cities, just like St. Louis, with great effect. Cure Violence begins by saying that you cannot arrest your way out of the problem. You need something else at play other than just arrest and incarceration. It also approaches the spread of crime just like the spread of a disease, right? And it treats the individuals and also the community in a different way than what we see today, right? Where we say, okay, we're just going to lock you up and hopefully that will reform you, right? We have to think of ways of getting out in front of the problem. And the way we get out in front of the problem is through an approach like a Cure Violence. So there's 3 steps to it. First, they identify and detect, right, and stop the spread of it, just like you would a disease, right? Secondly, they work with the people that are either, got into a life of crime or about to get there, right? And they begin to treat them, and turn them around, right? And then finally, they work to change the norms within the household and within the community, right? Now, there are a lot of levels of detail that allows you to get there. One of the main components are called violence interrupters. And violence interrupters are very highly trained people, all right, that have been trained through Cure Violence to engage with the community in a much different way than we are accustomed to seeing them engage. The violence interrupters are people that have some street credibility. They may have been formerly incarcerated. They may have have some standing within the community so that they can go into places that you and I and others may not be able to have access to, right? And they begin to turn people around. right? And these also, violence interrupters are also people that are on the right track and they've turned their lives around, and somewhere in their past they may have done some things that landed them on the wrong side of the law, right? So the question becomes, how do you quote unquote treat it? Are we talking about a medical procedure?
Right.
And it's not that. It's not that at all. It's a different approach. So in this case, let's say, you know, when someone's shot, right? So when they're shot, or if they shot and they're killed, or they're shot and they're in the hospital, right? A group through Cure Violence is notified, and those groups of violence interrupters respond. They go to the hospital, right? And they begin to engage with the person that may have been shot, if they're still alive, and also the family members and other people that are there, right, to assure that there isn't any retaliation, right? And that's, again, stopping the spread of it. And once they begin to engage with that community and the people that are there, right, it's a long-term engagement. And it's a systematic process of changing the norms within that group and within that community. They've done it with great success in places like New Orleans, where they've driven the murder rate down by 50%, right? New York, and you'll like this one because I know when you were at the board, one of the things you continued to say to every member of the board, you know what? Stop talking about murders and start talking about shootings, because every shooting is a potential murder.
And it's a much more accurate representation of the level of violence we have in the city.
Absolutely.
You know,
So
over 2,000 people a year.
over 2,000 people a year, right? So one of the things that they count is shootings, right?
Yeah.
There's a corridors programs count shootings. So if you work to drive the shootings down, naturally you will drive down the murders, right? And
Yeah.
so,
So where are we at with trying to get this program here in St. Louis?
All right, look, one final thing. In
Okay.
in the East Bronx, by counting shootings, right? They've gone, East Bronx now has gone over 1,000 days without one shooting.
Wow.
Can you imagine the city of St. Louis if we were able to do that, right? So here's where we're at. I want the city to put together multiple years of funding. I want to see a minimum of 3 years of funding in place for this program, because as you know and I know, the way budgets go and the way if people on the other side of this, if they're not committed to trying to put this thing in place, they will do what they need to do today. In next year's budget, you find the money missing or something's happened, right?
When the attention's gone away.
And the attention's gone, when people aren't watching anymore. So I'm asking for a total of $8 million to be allocated for this program.
And this will cover 3 years.
That covers 3 years. That covers us establishing the program and everything, right?
Okay.
You think about all the families that have buried kids this year, and you know, and all of the violence that has gripped our city and how it's impacting every single segment of our community.
Yeah.
If your family has not been visited by violence, right, it still affects you, because it affects our entire economy and it affects every single neighborhood, every single square inch of the city is affected.
The level of violence, along with the quality of public education, I think, are the top two reasons people are leaving the city.
Absolutely.
So we can lower that violence. It helps everybody, even if your neighborhood isn't one that is directly affected by that level of violence. So you got your hands full down the Board of Aldermen there.
Yes.
And so the current crisis, of course, is the level of violence, but you've got some stuff on the horizon. One of those things coming up is the redistricting coming up next year, or in 2021.
Exactly.
So you got a little bit more than a year. It happens after the census, and because of a charter amendment that was passed by the city, we will be eliminating half the Board of Aldermen.
Yes.
So it is the ultimate game of musical chairs.
Yes.
What are you doing to prepare for what is surely going to be a battle where 28 people, 29 including yourself, are going to vote on a map that eliminates 14 of them?
Yeah. Look, number one, as you know, when we went through that last redistricting, and you happened to be there, that last redistricting, and what we did, we set up a process that was fair and equitable across the board. And for the first time in the history of the city of St. Louis, you didn't see any court challenges, you didn't see any mass upheavals, you didn't see any arguing, nobody was throwing chairs at the board or anything.
No public urination on the floor?
None of that. We had 100%, every member of the Board of Aldermen co-sponsored that legislation for the first time, right? So we have to think about ways where we can assure the people that are currently holding office that they have a voice, right? And that there's going to be a fair and equitable process, and we have to hold people accountable through that process.
Yeah.
There are a number of junior aldermen that have just got to the board who are stepping up and would like to control that process. That would be a big mistake because they have no idea what they're walking into. Right?
Very complicated.
It is complicated, and there's and the group that's attempting to grab control of this thing are the same group that people would be suspicious about, disenfranchising minority wards, right? So it's really important to slow all of that down.
And that's going to be a real concern because even under normal circumstances, trying to maintain a racial balance in the city is difficult enough.
Absolutely.
And so now we're talking about radically redrawing the map. And there's a lot of different ways that can be done, and trying to ensure that minority groups, especially African Americans, have a chance at least to get fair representation on the Board of Aldermen. I mean, as you know, right now, the board is not evenly split.
Absolutely.
And that really, if it was not for your committee assignments, bills could be passed without any African American votes at all.
Absolutely.
But because of you put the committees together, African Americans have a voice. And so what is going to be done to try to make sure that this process is equitable, that everybody has a voice? Because not only are 14 aldermen going to lose their seat, the other things that people don't really talk about too much is you got 28 committee people.
Exactly.
And they can be just as influential and vocal in these redistricting battles as anybody else.
Exactly. And one of the things that here's the other piece of that, right? You have the committee people, you have the aldermen, but the other piece is the voters, right? All of a sudden, neighborhoods that do not like their aldermen, right now they can put together a neighborhood and maybe partner with another neighborhood and have enough people to overthrow an alderman or get them out of office. That becomes increasingly more difficult once the Board of Aldermen is shrunk, because now you have to muster up twice the votes that you had to muster up before.
And twice the money.
And twice the money.
Yeah.
And the aldermen now, see, and you remember that this issue was originally pushed not so much by the average voters. This issue was pushed by the big developers. And it was pushed by the big developers because every time they were looking to do a development in the city, the aldermen would go to their community and say, well, let me see what my community thinks about that, right? So to eliminate that step so that the alderman is not so tightly tethered to the wishes of that community, if they double the size of the wards, now all of a sudden that alderperson really doesn't have to listen to the community as much because their opinions are so diluted because now your vote has been cut in half.
And those races are going to cost more to become, to win those offices, and you probably have to go to the same pockets.
You're going to have to go to the big money to get it.
Well, listen, we're out of time, but thank you for being here today, and I appreciate your efforts down there.
Thank you.
All right. Now we take a look at the brand new 120,000 square foot, 2-story aquarium currently under construction at Union Station. Over 13,000 new animals will call the state-of-the-art facility home. And now the aquarium is asking the public for their help in naming its new family of otters.
Have you ever wanted to name an otter? Now is your chance. The St. Louis Aquarium at Union Station needs your help naming their new family of furry friends.
It's so exciting. We do have our 3 otters. We have 2 females and a male. They're about 9 months old right now. And we are opening up to all of our guests and the public to help us in naming the 3 of them. And we did post it out on Facebook so you can see the 3 different choices of names for each of the otters. It's a grouping of names for each one of them. That way you can go ahead and go there, check them out, and vote for the one that you would like to name the otters.
So what exactly are your options?
We have Splish, Splash, and Dash as one set, just kind of based on some of their behaviors and that kind of thing. We have Hopper, Zephyr, and Harvey, based on some trains and St. Louis history. And then we have Thatcher, Sawyer, and Finn, based on Huck Finn. So definitely get over there and get your vote in. And you'll vote by either putting in a heart for one group, a wow for one group, and a ha-ha for one group, depending on which group you like.
New names, new construction, new beginnings. The aquarium is set to open in December with a brand new home for the otters.
Right now we're standing in the otter exhibit. It's 1,600 square feet, space for 3 otters to live in. They have a large dig pit behind me that'll be full of sand and different other types of material that the otters can dig around and play in. They have a nice slide. That'll be a nice waterfall. They can actually slide down and have, enjoy playtime. As well as, if you look around, you see a lot of different rocks and logs and things like that. There'll be other types of natural environment things that we'll be putting in here, like grass and real logs and different things like that the otters can play around in, and changing it up every day.
We are just so excited to, get ourselves open in December of this year, get the otters here in their new habitat. I know that they will totally love their habitat that's going to have all kinds of different substrates and fun things for them to do in here, and a waterfall and a slide and their pool and everything else, and we're excited to get our guests in here to the St. Louis Aquarium to enjoy them too.
Bria Grimion, MetroSTL.com.
Joining me now is Animal Care Manager of Training, Kat Echevarria. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So what an exciting project for the city. So you are in charge of the otters themselves.
Correct.
And how many otters will be at the facility?
So we have 3 otters. They're all siblings. They're about 9 months old right now. We have a little boy and 2 little girls.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And so how many total animals will be at the facility?
We're actually going to have 13,000 animals and over 250 different species of animals. It's going to be amazing.
Wow, and all those animals are coming in from different places.
Correct.
How does that, logistically, how does that even happen?
Very carefully. Actually, so a lot of that is already, in the planning stages, obviously, as we, know sort of the time frame of construction and when their habitats are going to be ready and available to be able to receive them. Then they all will arrive in climate-controlled transports. Fish arrive in transports where the water quality is being monitored the entire time, the temperature is being monitored, dissolved oxygen. I mean, it's really all first-class stuff, just like how the otters actually got up here from Florida. They actually went first class with Southwest Airlines.
Really?
Yep. They each had their own individual seat on the very front in Southwest. They were all buckled in individually and everything.
Oh, wow.
It was really cool.
I bet that was a fun flight.
Yeah.
So you all are only having a few weeks left, so the clock is ticking for you.
It sure is. My gosh.
Yeah, so what's the mood like? What's the atmosphere there? Are you ready for it, or is it a lot of work to be done?
You know what? It feels like there's still a lot to do, but it's really in the finishing stages of things. And I'm actually out at the World Bird Sanctuary where the otters have their temporary habitat right now.
Oh, okay.
So I'm spending a lot of time out there with that really wonderful group of people who, are giving our otters their temporary home right now. So I'm spending most of my time out there. And I really actually get down to the aquarium construction site really maybe once a week or even every other week. Okay. So for me, from my perspective, every time I get down there, I feel like, wow, it's like we've really made progress over the last week. There's a new wall. I don't know where I'm going. I'm like, no, wait, how do I get to the otter habitat again?
Yeah, the changes are happening fast.
Yeah, so it really is. I think if you're there every day, it doesn't seem like it as much. But for me, every time I go there, I'm like, wow, this is really happening. It's really progressing nicely. And I think that all of our guests are going to be super excited.
So are you involved in this naming process of these otters?
So the only extent to which I'm involved is really just, we're asking the public, what do you want to name your otters, essentially? We want them to be excited to come and meet the otters, and the participation has been amazing. It's posted on Facebook, and so there's 3 different sets of names, and you pick one emoticon, for each set of names, and I've been amazed at just how quickly the whole community has jumped on it, and not even just from St. Louis, but really, all across the U.S. as things get shared, and then people even want to go ahead and be a part of that naming contest.
Are you getting a lot of good suggestions?
Well, what we did was we started with 3 sets of names to begin with. And so that's what people are voting on. So we have one set of names that's really based on just kind of their, antics,
Okay.
their behaviors,
Their personalities.
right? Which
Yeah.
is splish, splash, and dash, right? Which I think is really fun. And then we have another set that's really based on the train theme. I mean, we are right there
Union
in the
Station, right?
historic, Union Station.
Okay.
So those names are Hopper, Zephyr, and Harvey. So I think that really fits the whole motif. I think that's cool. And then the other set is Mark Twain characters. So Thatcher, Sawyer, and Finn. So I love that one too. Honestly, I
So many
really
choices.
am. And I already kind of I know which otter will sort of fit each one of those names. So I am really excited to see what the people of St. Louis decide on, what they want these otters to be named.
Well, we're excited to see the thing open and see what it's going to be. It's going to be a great addition to the city. So thanks for your work and thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, that's our show for today. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like and share our videos on Facebook. And check out MetroSTL.com every day for new stories and videos. Until next time, I'm Antonio French. Thanks for watching.